has to wear this hijab, and that's how it is. Yeah, that's where I'm like, my little Western self can't handle it sometimes. I love Malaysia. I really do. And so that's just a controversial subject. I didn't realize that Malaysia was prosecuting Muslims for not following all the rules of Islam. Hey peeps, welcome back to my channel, and hello if you are new here. I honestly cannot wait to get this video out into the social realm of the world. Gosh, I've been anticipating this video for so long, and I'm so excited that it's finally almost about to happen. But anyways, this is a little bit of a spicier portion of what my last video is. This is part 2 of my take on freedom of religion and if Malaysia is secular or not, in my opinion. That's where we're at today. It's gonna be good, it's gonna be exciting, and I'm always slightly nervous about talking about this topic on the internet, in the public space in general, but I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna try to just give my experience and my feelings. That's all I can do. That's all we can all do. I hope you take this and learn something from it, or help me learn from it. That would be great. I would love that as well. The first thing that I'm going to do in this video is show you what we discussed in part 1, so you know exactly what we've already discussed and how we've came to where we're at right now. Then I will explain what we're going to do in this video, and then we will start the video. So let's get going. In part 1, in my last video, we discussed my background with Islam and how I've come to have an increased interest in learning about different religions and Islam in general. After that, we looked at some footage of me going to a mosque in Malacca, which inspired this 2-part video series. We look at Malaysia's governmental structure and other entities' comments on Malaysia to kind of figure out how the government is structured in order to get to where we're at today with the news articles. Then I discuss a little bit of my thoughts on freedom of religion in Malaysia. In today's video, part 2, the first thing is I discuss some of my experiences with Islam in Malaysia, some people I've talked to, and what I've seen with my own eyes thus far. We go into recent news articles on freedom of religion in Malaysia and how that verifies what we learned about the government structure and the other comments that we got on Malaysia in general in part 1, and then I actually discuss my thoughts on Islam in Malaysia from my viewpoint and my opinion of this whole situation. So let's get started today. So my first experience, like I said in the previous part, was in Kuala Lumpur, and Kuala Lumpur is a tiny little town. I don't even know, an hour and a half outside of Kuala Lumpur, and that was my first month that I spent in Malaysia in 2015. Very unique experience, and they say that Kuala Lumpur is the heart of Malaysia. It's like the start of Malaysia. I'm not for sure how true that is because I never looked it up, but they say that that's where the original government or something was. I don't know. I'll have to look it up one day. It was really interesting. They were really proud of that. So I really appreciated from the very first time I went to Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur was such an amazing experience. I remember this little Muslim girl and some of her friends came up to our door and they wanted to be friends with us, which was really great and wonderful. She came by, we talked to her a little bit, and then she came by a second time and she was not in her hijab, and I was in utter shock because I was like, why isn't this girl in her hijab? She was probably 16 or 17 years old. I didn't want to ask at the time, but we ended up talking to her later on. She went to a cafe with us, and I ended up asking her, like, why weren't you wearing your hijab that day? That was very confusing to me because I am very much a rule follower in that sense. Like, if you're going to follow religion, you need to follow it in full. So if you say you believe in something and that's what you do, why weren't you doing that? And she just basically said she didn't really care about wearing the hijab, but when she was out and about, she had to wear it. Or if her dad ever caught her without it on, she would be in a lot of trouble. That was my first experience of going, yes, the hijab is not required in Islam. However, most of these people feel completely compelled, even if they don't care to wear it. I don't know how to feel about this. I'm not for sure how these Muslim women feel about this most of the time. That was just kind of my first experience with going, oh, maybe something might be a little off here. I don't know. When we were in Kuala Lumpur last, we kind of got to know this 40-year-old woman, and she actually never wore the hijab around us at all. And we started talking to her, and she had actually not considered herself a Muslim for 20 plus years at this point. It was very early on that she had decided she was not going to follow Islam. However, she had also told us that when she goes back home to her family and parents in a more remote village in Malaysia, she always wears the hijab. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about this. She has to wear this hijab, and that's how it is. Yeah. That's where I'm like, my little Western self can't handle it sometimes. But she thankfully has figured out a life of her own. She's found community. She has found support in her position, that even though she has to be fake around her actual family and community that she grew up with, she can't be her real self around them. But she's found a community that supports her and loves her despite not living up to the cultural norms of what society told her she was supposed to live up to. And so she was a very interesting story of like, why is this girl living in so much fear at the age of 40, hasn't considered herself a Muslim for 20 plus years? Why can she not say something to her family and community back home? Like, what is preventing her from doing this? It must be something pretty big, right? I think what I admire about these two women, they're both women now, the most is that they were willing to break free from what they'd always known. And that is what are true examples to me as a human being that lives in a world that is very much one way, very much conservative, Christian, XYZ. These two women who grew up in Malaysia in very conservative Muslim homes showed me an example of what it was like to break free from the thoughts of the people around you and educate themselves into something more. It's not that they stopped wearing the hijab. It didn't matter to me if they were wearing the hijab or not. It's that they had the courage to do it in the midst of big societal consequences. Like, there are some major, like I read earlier, societal consequences, fines, arrests, being put in a rehabilitation center. Like, there's a lot that goes with choosing to take this hijab off and not calling yourself a Muslim anymore. And how brave of these women. Like, I come from a Christian background, and just to say, if you're not Christian anymore, I understand the community aspects of losing your full community if you were to say these things out loud. It's not small. Just losing your community and all your support system, that's not small in general. These women were so brave to step out of their societal things. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it was not wearing this job anymore, or if they chose just to think something like, say if you're Mormon and you don't believe in drinking coffee, and you just choose to drink coffee because you just realize it's really not that bad, and you go against that. It takes a lot of bravery to step out of those societal boxes and say, maybe this part isn't that bad. Maybe if we just integrate it, it won't actually change the society. And maybe, even if it did change society, maybe it'd be for good. Like, maybe we can explore this idea. Maybe we can think about it. That's what these women are doing. They're allowing other people to think outside of what they've been told their whole lives, because maybe we can make society better through thinking, critical thinking. It's so important. Okay, let's move on to the news articles. First article that I'm going to read you is actually one of the biggest eye-opening moments for me. I didn't realize that Malaysia was prosecuting Muslims for not following all the rules of Islam. They do. So that was a big eye-opener for me as far as how much religious freedom Muslims actually have within the country. So this article is from CNN. It talks about Ramadan a little bit, and I want to do this for also my audience that doesn't maybe know anything much about Islam, what Ramadan is, and what steps police in Kuala Lumpur are taking to prevent Muslims from eating during that time and things like that. Religious authorities in Malaysia have stepped up moral policing efforts during the holy month of Ramadan, in what critics warn has been part of a wider recent shift towards a more conservative form of Islam in the multiracial and culturally diverse nation. First off, I was very happy that CNN actually put this in there, because they mention how culturally diverse Malaysia is and that they're multiracial, which is very true. And so I'm happy they put that in there because it gives a good context for what Malaysia is and where this is actually happening. It's not some crazy country that follows Islam that doesn't allow any other cultures or any other languages or any diversity. It's a pretty normal country that's just trying to make it through. But it also states that it's becoming more conservative Islam. And so it's like putting those two things in perspective so you kind of know where you're coming from. Ramadan, regarded as the holiest month in the Islamic calendar, is celebrated by Muslims around the world who abstain from eating, drinking, and sexual acts during daylight hours and break their fast after sundown. It is a month of deep spiritual reflection and celebration with friends and family, but can also be far from easy, as anyone who has tried fasting can attest. So I actually talked to one of my commenters on one of my previous videos about this, and he explained the different facets of Islam to me, about their daily life and how the different beliefs come about. It was very interesting. I'm very thankful for his commentary on that. But he also showed the purpose of Ramadan in those comments. It's about gaining a deeper understanding of God, Allah, through these things, through fasting. It shows you a connection to the community around you. It provides like a depth of spirituality that you may not have get just your normal day. So it has a very deep sense of community through God on the vertical and through your community around you on the horizontal, as Christians also do. Like, to me, what he said was very similar to why Christians would also fast or do things that we may not like, that cause some kind of discomfort for us, but it's for the good of their religion. I'm not for sure how I feel about all that. Sometimes, as humans, we might go a little far, but that's not what I'm commenting on right now. In many parts of Malaysia, Muslims caught eating or drinking during daytime hours can find themselves on the wrong side of the law. Around 20.6 million of Malaysia's 34 million population are Muslims, but the country is also home to sizable ethnic Chinese and Indian minorities that include Buddhists, Christians, and Hindus, as well as indigenous community. Under the country's unusual dual-track legal system, which is also federal and varies from state to state, Muslims are subject to Sharia law on a host of social issues, including marriage, divorce, and fasting. Religious police tend to ramp up their presence during Ramadan, activists note, which ends later this week, patrolling the streets more visibly and staking out popular eateries, sometimes in disguise, to catch those breaching the rules. Those caught eating or drinking during daytime hours face fines of up to 1,000 Malaysian ringgit, about $200, and prison terms of up to a year. Non-Muslims caught selling food, drink, or tobacco to Muslims during fasting hours are also subject to penalties. Arrest figures have not been released for this year, but in 2023, religious officials in the state of Malacca, a major tourist destination, recorded nearly 100 arrests of Muslims caught eating in public during the fasting month, an increase from 41 arrests the previous year. This year, more than 10 hotspots were identified throughout the state, said the chairman of its Islamic Religious Department. Then the article goes on and shows a picture of a man literally running with his food away from the religious police, which I guess went viral on TikTok or whatever. I think it was kind of funny because I'm like, how sad that you have to run away with your food. I guess you're not even allowed to buy food during those times. Like, can you go to the grocery store and buy food even if you're not eating it? I guess not. So I think that's kind of odd because your intent maybe to just make food so you can eat at sundown? I don't know. I don't know if that's allowed or not, but if somebody's running with a takeaway bag of food, what if they're just taking away for later? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below how that actually plays out and works. Then the article goes on to talk about how they've kind of been wanting the country to go a little bit more conservative Islam and follow harsher Sharia law. CNN reached out to multiple state religious bodies across Malaysia for comment. One religious enforcement officer from Malacca said that more raids have been carried out this year at various roadside stalls, restaurants, and parks as compared to 2023 and 2022. It is our responsibility to protect and preserve the name of Islam during this important time, said the male officer, who declined to be named as he was not authorized to speak with international media. But not all cases result in arrest, he also stressed. It is also important that we show compassion, especially on very hot days when we see people drinking water. Sometimes it can't be helped. And that was so important to me that he said that, because my biggest concern, if you want to fast for your religion, by all means fast for your religion. It can be dangerous, especially in hot weather. And a lot of Middle Eastern countries are in very hot climates. And if you can't even drink water all day and you're out doing stuff, like in my previous video, I talk about the tuk-tuk drivers, and they are literally pedaling those tuk-tuks all day long with tourists in them at 95-degree weather. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but I'll put it down below. With no water. That's actually dangerous. I just don't want people to get hurt. Like, you can fast, you can do all these things. Just don't physically hurt yourself for this. It could really, like, kill somebody. And would Allah want you to die over this? Maybe so. I don't know. You can still get those benefits and drink water if you're dehydrated. Like, I don't know. That's my personal viewpoint, and I know that probably goes against Islam. I really appreciated that he said this, that it's hot, and sometimes you just have to drink water. The article continues a little bit longer about other activists calling for less strict Islamic law. It'll be linked down below, so you can go read it if you would like. In this next article, it talks about a woman who wanted to renounce her faith in Islam, and she spent years doing this. So let's read a little bit in this article. A Muslim woman who had hoped to renounce her religion to get married to a non-Muslim will have to remain in the faith. This follows a majority decision by 3-member branch refusing her leave to appeal a court of appeal ruling handed down last year. She's already gone through this whole process, and I guess they are telling her she's no longer allowed to appeal the decision. She is not allowed to deconvert out of Islam any longer. It's not happening. She's been working on this for a couple years, and in this final appeal, she appealed 4 different things, which I am not an expert on, and so I'm not even going to go through that with y'all, but the findings, I think, and how she got there are very interesting. On August 23 last year, the Court of Appeal dismissed the woman's appeal for leave to bring judicial review proceeding in her bid to renounce Islam. It held that the civil courts have no jurisdiction to review decisions handed down by the Sharia courts. This is the point in that U.S. report where it says Parliament is making laws in favor of Islam, and it makes the law very ambiguous, and she got caught up in this. Now they are saying the civil court cannot repeal the Sharia law court decision in her case in particular. So that's very important, because previously we read that they are allowed to. The federal court is the final court of appeal, and they were in this case too. They were the final appeal. However, it had no bearing because the Sharia court had already made a decision. The woman, born a Muslim, claimed she never practiced Islam and that her mother had allowed her to choose her religion. She had gone to the Kuala Lumpur Sharia High Court in 2018 to seek an order that she be allowed to renounce Islam, as she intended to practice Buddhism. However, the Sharia court ordered her to attend 12 counseling sessions instead. 2 years later, the Sharia court denied her application to leave Islam and ordered her to attend additional counseling sessions instead. An appeal to the Sharia appeals court failed. The woman then turned to the civil courts to nullify the decision of the Sharia courts. She claimed the decision to reject her application to renounce Islam violated Article 11, which guarantees an individual's freedom of religion. Her application had previously been dismissed by the High Court in 2022. What I'm seeing in these news articles directly back up the U.S. report of what is happening in the country, that Muslims are not being allowed to deconvert. Instead, they're sent to rehabilitation centers and just denied these rights in general. I don't know if Muslims in this case have freedom of religion. Do they? I don't know. The other two articles that I have are just kind of, in my opinion, a little funny. I don't think Muslims would take them as funny. Obviously they don't, because people are being arrested over them. To me, I'm like, this seems like the least of our problems in life. But I can see how they can be offensive, so let's give them a little read. I'm gonna save the funniest one for last because I'm just like, it doesn't even make sense to me. Like, I understand that he was insulting Islam, but it doesn't make sense. Anyways, we'll go over that in a second. So the first one I have is a retailer, which is KK Supermart. It is like a little convenience store that is all over Malaysia. Besides Speedmart 99, or 99 Speedmart, I forgot what it's called, which is one of my favorites. KK Mart is probably the second most popular one that I've seen personally. They were selling socks that had the word Allah written on the socks. And the reason I can see that this is offensive, because feet are very offensive. Asians kind of, I think, have a thing with feet being dirty and all that. I personally don't care. I would put anything on socks and it wouldn't make a difference to me, but I can understand in their culture that it is offensive. So, a Malaysian court has charged top executives of a convenience store chain and its suppliers for hurting religious feelings after socks with the word Allah were found on sale in one of its shops. 5 people were charged on Tuesday after photos of the offending socks caused outrage on social media. They were charged with deliberately intending to hurt religious feelings, according to the charge sheet. All defendants pleaded not guilty. If convicted, they can face up to a year in jail, a fine, or both. Religion is a sensitive issue in Malaysia, where about 2/3 of the population is Malay Muslim, and there are also large minorities of ethnic Chinese and Indian origin. The sale of the socks, which amounted to just 14 pairs, according to KK Mart, during the fast of Ramadan, prompted particular outrage among Muslims. The case drew a rare royal rebuke from Malaysia's king, who called for an investigation and strict action against any party found guilty. Photos of the socks had spread on social media, many viewing the association between the word Allah and feet to be insulting. The word Allah is highly esteemed in the eyes of Muslims, said Mohammed Naeem Mokhtar, Malaysia's religious affairs minister. Allah is our creator, and the act of putting Allah at our feet is an insult. Early on Tuesday morning, Malaysian media said there was a firebombing attempt on a KK Mart outlet in the northern state of Perak. No injuries were reported after a bottle filled with kerosene was thrown into the shop. KK Supermart has apologized over the socks, saying it views the matter seriously and has taken action to stop their sale immediately. This is the problem I have with this situation. Somebody has gone and now purposely destroyed somebody else's property because of this situation. I understand that the socks were offensive. However, sometimes whenever authority says you need at all costs, these people are guilty, at all costs they need to be fined, arrested, whatever. And there are circumstances where that's the case, right? Perfectly fine. However, when it comes to religion, and religion being at the helm of things, there's such deep feelings that people have towards religion. It speaks to us on a different level than a lot of other things. And so when you connect that religion in with causing like extreme, like saying they're guilty, they need to be punished, whatever, you will have somebody on the other side that's extreme, that will take things into their own hands and may do something out of hatred that wouldn't have been done previously. And so, yes, can they, according to the law, find these people guilty and punish them? Yes. There also needs to be another side where it's like the law is taking care of this. We don't need a normal person to take things in their own hands and destroy property on the other side. That's why the law is here. Religion sometimes causes these tensions that aren't really necessary. Somebody took it in their own hands, and that needs to be taken care of as well. So I hope it was overall. I don't know. And the last article, is about 4 foreigners being arrested for saying something against Islam on a pizza receipt. It's not even proper English, so to me it's like whatever, but I just don't quite get it. In fact, the original article I looked at bleeped all what they thought was bad out of the receipt, so I had to go to look at another source to find out what the receipt actually said. Here's the original article I found. Penang cops arrest 4 over insult to Islam and pizza order receipt. Penang police have arrested 4 people to assist in the investigation into the case of a message apparently mocking Islam printed on a Domino's customer pizza receipt. So far, we have received 17 police reports on the case. That is crazy. There has been outrage over a viral picture of the receipt with a message that apparently came from a customer's entry in the delivery instruction section of the online order. Domino's Pizza Malaysia lodged a police report over the offending message, and its spokesman said in a statement this pizza chain has taken appropriate action against both the customer and the staff member involved. 4 foreigners arrested. I think there was 1 local person also arrested. I guess that maybe that's a staff member. But here is what the original receipt said. At this noisy place with stupid moaning sounds like having everyday stupid Islam. Do you see how I just think this is funny? I'm not saying it's not offensive to Islam. Saying stupid Islam, I guess, is offensive. I don't take things as seriously. Like, if somebody said stupid Christianity, it's like, okay, like, whatever, you know. I would think it was a joke. You have to be so respectful of the religion in every single situation. And even in Malaysia, you have to be respectful of Islam at all costs. If you're a foreigner, non-foreigner, non-Muslim, that's how it has to be. Even though this is somewhat ridiculous. Like, honestly, it's just ridiculous because it doesn't even make sense. What does this even mean? I don't know. I don't know what it means. Here's the hard part of the video for me in general. I love Malaysia. I really do. It is one of my favorite countries in the entire world. It has been since the first time I visited Malaysia because the people are genuinely amazing. Their culture is amazing. There's such diversity in Malaysia, and I truly appreciate that. I never want to get kicked out of a country or say anything that would prohibit me from traveling around the world. So I want to be extremely respectful and say that I do respect Islam in certain ways. Sometimes I disagree with the religion, but I don't come from that background. And so, like I mentioned earlier, we all have different viewpoints and opinions. It could be wrong or right. So if you think that I'm wrong in some way, I would love to hear from you, but I would also ask you to help me learn and grow. Not just fully criticize me and tell me how terrible I'm being, but actually help me understand your viewpoint and thoughts on the situation. And at the end of the day, honestly, we may not agree, but at least we were respectful with each other and understand each other just a little bit more, because that's all I've ever found from my comments on YouTube, is that I can understand those people a little bit more, and hopefully they can understand me a little bit more as well. Please be respectful. I would really appreciate that. If you followed me for a while, you'll see that a lot of my videos, I do talk about religion, or I have the subject of religion or anything like that. And this is really the reason why I do that. One, like I said earlier, I am just very interested in religion in general. That is my special interest from a very young age. 2, almost all societies have religion as a part of that society. And in order to understand that society, you have to understand the religion, because it's such a reflection of the culture, or the culture has been highly influenced by that religion. Lastly, if you've been a lot of places around the world, the religious centers of society are typically in the center of towns, cities. So if you go to Mexico, you go to the Zocalo, and normally at the Zocalo there is a church. If you go to a Malaysian place, normally there is a mosque, and that is a huge deal. Or there's a Hindu temple in Malaysia, or Chinese, Buddhist, whatever. Those are the center of society. And as a tourist, that shows you the world that you're in at that time, and that's how you can experience their culture. Religion is a part of culture and is a part of who we are and how we function in society. It is very, very important. Okay, from here on out in the video, there shouldn't be that much longer, but I may be reading off my screen because I want to say the correct things of what I really feel, and I don't want to deviate from that. I do believe that there is such diversity in culture in Malaysia, and it promotes and fosters an environment of peace and safety for the people that live in Malaysia. I think that overall they have done a phenomenal job at integrating different cultures because, as we all know, that is one of the hardest things that any society has to do. Like I said earlier, we all come from these different backgrounds and we all think that we're right and that we have the right religion, we have the right food, we have the right thoughts and beliefs. That is a part of humanity because that's how you defend yourself. You gather a group of people that have the same beliefs as you, and then from there you can defend yourself out in the world against other people that don't believe the same thing as you. That's kind of how our minds work as humans. In order to overcome that, it takes a lot, and I give Malaysia a big bonus points on being able to do that so well and promote peace and safety within their society. I think they have done one of the best jobs that I've seen. Nonetheless, there is no getting around that Islam rules Malaysia in so many different facets. The authorities and constitution can say that Malaysia is a secular country, and on paper it is. And from my understanding, only Muslims can hold office at the highest level, and those leaders are the head of Islam within their state. If you are considered Malay, you are not allowed to deconvert unless you have permission from the Sharia courts, which is rarely given. In my viewpoint, and what I'm seeing from everything I've read thus far, there seems to be freedom to the extent that you maintain your place in life or convert to Islam, because I'm sure converting to Islam is perfectly fine. I have personally spoken to Malays that have to hide their religious identity from their family, friends, and society because they no longer consider themselves Muslim. And revealing that would come at a very high price. You would be fined, arrested, put in a rehabilitation center. Those same things can even happen to you if you are not Sunni Muslim in general. That is a huge deal. It's not like it's just Islam. It's that you have to be the right kind of Islam, even in Malaysia. Or they can still send you to a rehabilitation center just for being the wrong kind of Muslim as well. Or the fact that during Ramadan, the government arrests Malays if they're found eating during the daytime. They arrest people for anything offensive to Islam, whether you're a Muslim or non-Muslim. But do they do the same thing when people say offensive things about other religions? That would be more, in my mind, a freedom of religious thing there. Is like all religions are treated equally in this society. So would the Malaysian government arrest and fine people for saying offensive things about Buddhism or Taoism, etc., etc.? At the end of the day in Malaysia, I feel very safe. I feel safe to go into a mosque. I feel safe to go into Hindu temples, Taoist temples, Chinese temples. I even feel safe to go to a Christian church. No big deal whatsoever. In the eyes of a tourist, Malaysia is a perfectly safe place where everybody gets along. That's what I see from the outside. I wouldn't even know all this happened if the people on YouTube hadn't pressed me to find it out. I probably wouldn't have looked at any of this, which is such an interesting thing. But now I kind of it's kind of my thing. So when I look at the news articles, things tell a little bit of a different story. And you start seeing the experience in all the different cultures in Malaysia. These are the actual lived experiences of the people here in Malaysia. They're more than just what the tourists can see. They're the actual opinions and beliefs and what's actually happening within that country. Everything can look good on the outside, but sometimes you look a little deeper and it's like, well, is everybody treated equally? I don't know. So then you have to look a little deeper. You have to ask people in the culture. and figure out what they're seeing and what they're doing to actually figure out if this is the case. It'd be the same thing if you asked me about the US, in my opinion about something religion, freedom of religion in the US. I have an opinion about that in particular just as well as I do in Islam. But it takes somebody living there and the real lived experience of those people. Coming from a Western viewpoint, I believe that people should have not only freedom of religion, which I think they do have here to some extent, but I think they should have freedom from religion, which I also don't think they have. When I was looking up other things in the past, this is due to Islamic studies being compulsory in public schools with the caveat that non-Muslims complete moral trainings. However, that is the widely held consensus. There is a lot of controversy on this subject matter because a lot of people state that even though the non-Muslims are not required to complete the Muslim training in the schools, they are still teaching Islamic principles in the moral training. And so that's just a controversial subject. Some people report it, some people say it's not true, so I don't specifically know on that. When the civil courts defer to the Sharia courts on most everything, the secular aspects don't really make sense to me. If Muslims don't have the ability to deconvert and choose their own religion, can that country claim to have freedom of religion? If the majority, 60%, are Malay Muslims and they can't deconvert, do those people have freedom of religion? Just a question. Until my dying breath, I will fight for every person's right to freely educate themselves and make their own decisions about what they believe and how they choose to proceed with that belief. Yes, some people will make incorrect choices with that freedom, but that normally happens when they are in a vacuum with only one train of thought. I would encourage every person to step out of their own culture, even if that means exploring different parts of the internet that your society deems taboo. And no, I'm not talking about the harmful parts of the internet and the bad things that come with that, but things that give you a different perspective than what your little world provides you and where you grew up. I'll give you an example from Christianity, but it can apply to any religion or any group thing. So in Christianity, there is a big debate upon evolution and whether evolution is correct. You have a whole group of conservative Christians that say God created the world in 7 days, the world is only 4,000 years old, yada, yada, yada. Then you have scientists that say that's actually not true. The world is this many years old and whatever. Well, the fact of the matter is the Bible doesn't actually have that much to say on this subject because, believe it or not, the theory of evolution came hundreds of years after the Bible was written. So therefore, the Bible can't really speak to this topic. So what most people do in conservative Christianity in the US, they defer to their pastor, which very knowledgeable people about the Bible, but maybe those pastors don't have all the knowledge in the world about scientific information, scientific studies, and why scientists are over here saying, well, this theory is actually provable enough that it's the number one theory of how the world was created in this day and time. So what I would encourage people to do, like, you know your pastor's viewpoint, you know your community's viewpoint on this subject matter, but you may not know the scientist's viewpoint on this matter and why scientists actually say what they say, because there are a lot of intelligent people that say it's correct. And we live in the age of the internet where you can actually learn from experts like at your fingertip. It's so cool and unique. So we have this opportunity to hear our viewpoint and our society's viewpoint and other people's viewpoint and their decision about this matter. And we get to learn from both so that we can make an informed decision for ourselves. That is what I'm asking people to do so that you can make an informed decision with all the information, not just what your society told you, not just with what these scientists told you, but what everybody says, and make an informed decision without just spouting off the random stuff that you just don't even actually know about. Even this theory may apply to Islam as well, like if I understand it correctly. that Islam has kind of the same creation story, and they think the same thing about evolution. I'm sure there's a diverse opinion, just like in Christianity, but there's so much we can learn from so many people, and that's what I would encourage you to do. I want people to be able to challenge themselves and learn and grow from the information that we are given. Don't just get information and discard it based on your previous biases. Take that information, think about it, critically think about it, and if you don't know, defer to both sides of the matter and come to a conclusion. Find out information, learn and grow, and become inspired ourselves to go inspire other people to learn and grow for themselves so that we can be more cohesive as a society. I would go encourage you to learn and keep thinking for yourself. Keep growing, learning, and thinking. It's so important so that we don't get caught in the ruts of what the people around us are telling us. Yes, they can be right, but sometimes they are wrong, and you are an individual person who deserves to be able to critically think for yourself and move forward in your own life and choose for yourself your own beliefs. I hope that some of this video made sense. All in all, I really love Malaysia. I believe that it is a diverse country that includes many cultures and has done a really decent job of integrating different religions within its societal bounds. However, all the comments that I get on YouTube about it being a religiously free country cause me to look into it and try to figure out, well, what are the actual laws and how does Islamic law rule in the society? When looking at all the news articles, when talking to people in Malaysia and trying to figure this out, I'm not for sure. Like, I don't know, because I'm probably missing a lot of stuff still when it comes to this society. Obviously, I'm not a part of it 24/7. I haven't been there my full life. There are so much more things to know than I will probably ever know in my life. Is Malaysia, in your opinion, is Malaysia a religiously free society? With all these things presented to you, is it completely secular? Is it free? I would encourage you, before you just say the Constitution says it's secular, I would encourage you to go out and research for yourself about these things and try to come to your own conclusion about what you think religious freedom is, or how you think Islamic law comes down through the society, like actually how it comes down through society. Malaysians are probably the best to know that in general, right? Of course you know that. Of course you know, or most likely, you have a good idea of how it actually happens and works in the society. So don't just quote the Constitution to me, but tell me how it actually works and how you see that Malaysian society is secular, or how you see religious freedom in that society. That's what I want to know from you. And honestly, through this video, if you're Muslim or non-Muslim alike, I would highly encourage you, if I can get one person to just think outside of the box they've been given and not just take somebody's word for it, but actually to go out and research from all sides and learn for yourself. If I can get one person just to go think outside their little box, then this video was worth it. Like, none of the other stuff matters. Like, we don't have to take our parents' word for it. We don't have to take our pastor's word for it. We don't have to take our teacher's word for it. We don't have to take other religious authorities' word for how we live our lives. You are more capable than you could ever imagine to figure things out for yourself. Ask questions. Don't feel bad. Don't try to have somebody stop you from asking questions and learning and growing for yourself, because your questions are very important, and if they can't answer them, then there might be something to that question. There might be something there, and it has to make sense to you so that you can fully have faith and believe in whatever they're trying to give you. And if it doesn't make sense to you, then maybe you shouldn't believe in it. Maybe that isn't your path. And that's up to you to decide. And that is the beauty of being a human. So, there you go. Let's go out and make our world 1% better today. And I will see you on the next one. Bye, guys.